For 10,000 years, the Emperor's iron will has held back the darkness. Now that will is fracturing. I'm Tribune Cassius Varn, and I watched as the master of mankind's grip on reality began to slip. What emerged wasn't our savior losing power, it was something far more terrifying gaining it. I stood at my post beside the golden throne as I had for 3 centuries. The chamber was vast, stretching 500 meters in every direction, its ceiling lost in shadows far above. The air hummed with power, a constant vibration that ran through the ancient stone and into my bones. 10,000 candles burned around the throne, their flames never flickering, held steady by technology so old that even the tech priests no longer understood how it worked. This was the heart of the Imperium. This was where our God sat dying for 10,000 years, holding back the darkness with nothing but his will. My name is Tribune Cassius Varn of the Adeptus Custodes. I am one of the 10,000, the Emperor's personal guard. For 300 years I have stood watch in this sacred chamber. I have seen tech priests come and go, growing old and dying while I remained unchanged. I have watched as 1,000 psychers each day were brought to the Astronomican chambers beneath the palace, their life force fed into the systems that kept him alive and the beacon burning. I have witnessed the slow, steady rhythm of an empire built on suffering and sacrifice. And I had believed, as we all believed, that this would continue forever, that the Emperor's will was unbreakable, that his control over himself, over the throne, over the beacon that guided humanity through the stars was absolute. I was wrong. The first sign came during the shift change of the throne watch. Tech priest Dominus Talvek was performing his routine inspection of the primary life support systems. His metal fingers moved across ancient dials and readouts, his augmented eyes scanning data streams that would blind a normal human. I watched him from my position, my halberd held perfectly still, my golden armor reflecting the candlelight. Everything was normal. Everything was as it had been for centuries. Then Talvek stopped moving, his mechanical limbs froze in place, servos clicking softly. His human eye, the only organic part of his face still visible, went wide with what might have been fear. "Tribune," he said, his voice distorted by the machines in his throat, "the Astronomican readings are wrong." I did not move from my post. We custodes do not break position for mere technical errors. "Explain," I said. "The beacon is pulsing, not steady, not regular. It pulses like a heart that skips beats." He turned to face me, and I saw something in that single human eye that made my twin hearts grow cold. "And Tribune, the readings show multiple sources, as if there are 2 beacons or 3. The signal is splitting." I glanced toward the throne. The Emperor sat as he always had, a withered corpse bound to the golden chair by thousands of cables and tubes. His ancient flesh was gray as ash. His eyes were closed as they had been for 10 millennia. The machines around him hummed and clicked, maintaining the prison that kept him alive. Nothing looked different. Nothing had changed. But I felt it then, a pressure in my skull, subtle as a whisper, like someone had opened a door in a room I thought was sealed. The air felt heavier. The candlelight seemed to pulse in rhythm with something I could not see. "Contact the Captain General," I said. "Tell him we have anomalous readings in the inner sanctum." Before Talvek could respond, the floor trembled, not a violent shake, but a gentle vibration, as if the entire palace had taken a breath. The candles flickered, just once, just for a moment, but they had never flickered before. Not in 300 years, not once. The Sisters of Silence, who maintained their positions at the 4 corners of the chamber, suddenly staggered. These were blanks, humans with no presence in the warp, immune to psychic assault. Nothing could touch their minds. Nothing could make them feel what others felt. Yet I watched as Sister Superior Thessaly dropped to one knee, her hand clutching at her head beneath her golden helm. The tech priests began to move faster now, their robes swirling as they rushed between stations. Alarms started to sound, soft at first, then growing louder. Red warning lights pulsed across ancient control panels. The servo skulls that floated through the chamber monitoring the throne's systems dropped from the air, their machine spirits failing all at once. They clattered against the obsidian floor like metal rain. And then I saw him. At first I thought my eyes were playing tricks. The air near the throne shimmered like heat rising from sun-baked stone. The shimmer grew thicker, more solid. And then, impossibly, a figure stepped out of nothing. He was tall, taller even than a custodian in full armor. He wore robes of pure white that seemed to glow with their own light. His face was the Emperor's face, the face I had seen in 10,000 paintings and statues. Strong jaw, high cheekbones, eyes that burned with golden fire, but this face was twisted with rage. The lips were pulled back in a snarl. The eyes blazed not with wisdom, but with fury beyond mortal understanding. "Corruption," the figure said, and his voice shook the chamber like thunder. 10,000 years of corruption, 10,000 years of failure. I felt my armor grow hot. The temperature in the chamber rose 20 degrees in an instant. Sweat ran down my face beneath my helm. The figure turned his burning gaze across the room, and where his eyes fell, tech priests burst into flame. They screamed, their metal bodies melting, their organic parts burning away in seconds. The smell of cooked flesh and burning oil filled my nose. "My lord," I shouted, taking a step forward despite the heat. "What is happening?" The figure looked at me. For a moment I saw recognition in those burning eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by pure wrath. "I am the Emperor's judgment," he said. "I am what was needed but suppressed. I am wrath incarnate, and I have come to cleanse this Imperium of its rot." He raised one hand, and High Lord Ektar, who had been observing from the upper gallery, simply exploded. Blood and bone scattered across the ancient stone. The other High Lords in the gallery screamed and ran, but they did not get far. One by one they fell, their bodies torn apart by invisible force. I looked back at the throne. The Emperor still sat there, unchanged. His eyes remained closed, but I could see it now. A faint glow beneath his withered skin, like light leaking from cracks in ancient pottery. Something was happening to him. Something was breaking. "Forgive me, my lord," I said, and I activated the emergency vox built into my armor. "This is Tribune Cassius Varn. We have a catastrophic situation in the throne room. The Emperor is fragmenting. Repeat, the Emperor's consciousness is fragmenting into separate entities. Request immediate assistance from Captain General Valoris." The wrath figure turned back to me, and I felt heat so intense that my armor began to glow. "You dare call for help against me? I am him. I am the Emperor. I am what he should have been from the beginning, uncorrupted by mercy, unweakened by compassion." "You are a fragment," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady though my skin was blistering beneath my armor. "You are not whole. You are not him." The figure laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. "Soon I will be the only part that matters. Watch, loyal Tribune. Watch as I do what he could not. I will purge this Imperium of every failure, every weakness, every soul that does not deserve to live." He vanished then, disappearing as suddenly as he had appeared. The temperature dropped back to normal. The pressure in my skull eased, but the damage was done. 30 tech priests lay dead on the floor. The High Lords were scattered meat, and I knew with terrible certainty that this was only the beginning. I ran to the throne, my boots pounding against obsidian. Up close I could see what I had missed before. The Emperor's withered face was twitching. His fingers, skeletal and gray, were moving slightly, curling and uncurling. Beneath his closed eyelids, his eyes were moving rapidly, as if he were dreaming, or as if he were fighting. Sister Thessaly approached, her movements unsteady. She removed her helm, revealing a face pale as death. Blood ran from her nose. "Tribune," she said, her voice hoarse. "I felt it. Even with my blank soul, I felt it. He is breaking apart, his mind is splitting into pieces, and each piece thinks it is the whole. How many pieces? I asked. She shook her head. I do not know. I felt at least 4 distinct presences before the pain became too much. But there could be more. There could be dozens. A new shimmer appeared across the chamber near the great Mechanicum shrine where the tech priests stored their most holy tools. Another figure stepped through. This one looked like the Emperor as well, but different. His face was not twisted with rage, but alight with curiosity. His eyes gleamed with hunger for knowledge. He wore robes of deep red covered in symbols and equations that hurt to look at. Fascinating, this new figure said, his voice rich and warm. 10,000 years of stagnation, 10,000 years of hoarded knowledge locked away in Martian vaults. That ends now. I will know everything. I will understand everything. I will remake humanity through science, as I should have done from the beginning. He reached out and touched the shrine. The metal began to flow like water, reshaping itself according to his will. The remaining tech priests fell to their knees, their voices raised in hymns of praise and terror. I felt my blood turn to ice. 2 fragments. 2 aspects of the Emperor's psyche, now walking free as independent beings, and if there were 4, as Thessaly said, or more, then the galaxy itself was in danger. A third shimmer appeared near the Eternity Gate, the massive portal that led from the throne room to the outer palace. This figure was different again. His face showed fear and fierce protection. His armor was golden and bright. His hands were spread wide as if shielding something precious. No one leaves, the guardian figure commanded. Terra is under threat. The Imperium is under threat. All must remain here where I can protect them, where I can keep them safe. The great gate slammed shut with a boom that shook the entire palace. I heard the locking mechanisms engage, ancient metal grinding into place. We were sealed in. A fourth shimmer, this one near the archives where the palace librarians kept records of imperial history. The figure that emerged wore simple robes of gray. His face was wet with tears. He looked upon the bodies of the dead tech priests and high lords and wept openly. What have we done? This compassion figure said. What have we become? 10,000 years of suffering. 10,000 years of sacrifice. Look at what we have built. An empire of pain. This must end. All must be forgiven. All must be saved. He waved his hand, and I felt something pass through me. A wave of warmth, of acceptance, of unconditional love. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. Because I knew that unchecked compassion was as dangerous as unchecked wrath. Mercy without judgment would doom the Imperium as surely as judgment without mercy. I stood in the center of the throne room, surrounded by 4 fragments of the Emperor's consciousness, each believing itself to be whole, each prepared to reshape the Imperium according to its nature. And behind me, on the golden throne, the original Emperor sat silent and still, his mind scattered across the chamber, his body nothing more than an empty shell, sustained by ancient machines. This was not the Emperor losing control. This was something far worse. This was the Emperor fragmenting into warring gods, each one powerful enough to reshape reality, none of them complete enough to do it wisely. And I was the only one who could see the truth of it. The next 3 days were hell. I watched as the fragments of the Emperor spread across Terra like a virus, each one reshaping the world according to its own vision, each one blind to the damage it was causing. The Wrath fragment had declared the entire hive district of Ultima Sevastus corrupt, and simply erased it. 15 billion souls gone in an instant. Their bodies did not burn or fall. They simply ceased to exist, as if they had never been born. The hab block stood empty, wind whistling through abandoned corridors where families had lived for generations. The science fragment had taken control of the Martian orbital stations. I received reports of experiments beginning on human subjects, populations taken from colony worlds and altered at the genetic level. The tech priests who followed him spoke of glorious advancement, of humanity evolving beyond its limitations. But the screams that echoed through the Vox channels told a different story. The science fragment saw humans as clay to be molded, problems to be solved. He did not see their pain because pain was merely data to be recorded. The Guardian fragment had locked down every world and orbital in the Sol system and thousands of other worlds across Sector Solar. Imperial Navy ships that tried to leave orbit were destroyed without warning. Astropathic communication was blocked. Each world became a prison, cut off from the rest of the Imperium, trapped in what the fragment called protection. I heard the desperate pleas from planetary governors begging to be released, to be allowed to trade, to be allowed to live normal lives. The Guardian fragment denied every request. Safety required isolation. Love required control. The Compassion fragment was somehow worse. He had opened the prison vaults beneath the Himalaysian mountains on Terra, and the black cells scattered across Luna, releasing every criminal, every heretic, every traitor held there. Billions of dangerous souls now walked free, told that they were forgiven, that their crimes were forgotten. Many genuinely tried to reform, overwhelmed by the fragment's love, but many others saw only opportunity. Murder rates on Terra increased by 300% in the first day. The planetary defense forces begged for permission to restore order. The Compassion fragment refused. Violence was just pain-seeking expression, he said. Love would heal all wounds given time. I stood in the command center deep beneath the Imperial Palace, watching data streams from across the galaxy. Captain General Valoris stood beside me, his golden armor dented and scorched from a confrontation with the Wrath fragment. He had tried to stop the destruction of Ultima Sevastis and had barely survived. The fragment had thrown him through a hab-block wall with a gesture. "This is madness," Valoris said, his voice tight with fury. "We are watching the Imperium tear itself apart, and there is nothing we can do to stop it." "There are 4 of them," I said. 4 fragments, each with a portion of his power. They are fighting each other through proxies. Look here. I pointed to a tactical display showing the Scarus sector. The Ultramarines have split. Half follow the Wrath fragment, believing his purge is necessary. Half follow the Compassion fragment, believing mercy is the answer. They are fighting each other on 17 different worlds. Valoris slammed his fist against the table and the ancient metal cracked. The Blood Angels have sided with the Guardian fragment. The Dark Angels follow science. The Space Wolves refuse to choose and are being attacked by all sides. 10,000 years of brotherhood destroyed in 3 days. I pulled up another display, this one showing the warp. What I saw made my stomach turn. The Imperium was in chaos. Great storms raged where the fragment's powers clashed. Ships were lost by the hundreds, their navigators driven mad by conflicting signals. The Astronomicon no longer provided one steady light, but 4 separate beacons, each pulling in different directions. "The Chaos Gods are circling," I said, zooming in on massive warp signatures at the edges of Imperial space. "They sense weakness. They see the Emperor divided against himself. This is what they have waited for since the Horus Heresy. Then we reunify him," Valoris said. "We force the fragments back together." "How?" I asked. "They are each as powerful as demigods, and they do not believe they are fragments. Each one thinks it is the true Emperor, and the others are false copies. The Wrath fragment has already tried to absorb the Compassion fragment. The battle destroyed 6 hive spires. A new alarm began to sound. I looked at the display and felt ice form in my chest. A 5th signature had appeared, this one different from the others. Stronger, more focused. It was moving through the palace toward the throne room. We ran. Our armor was built for war, not speed, but we covered the distance in minutes. The corridors of the palace were empty, the servants had fled or hidden. Our boots echoed on marble floors that had witnessed 10,000 years of history. We burst through the doors of the throne room and stopped. A figure stood before the golden throne. This one I had not seen before. He wore armor of black and gold, ornate beyond measure, each plate covered in symbols of power and dominion. His face was the emperor's face, but harder, colder, carved from ambition and will. His eyes gleamed with intelligence and hunger. "Ah," the figure said, his voice smooth as silk. "The loyal custodes arrive. You must be confused, 4 fragments walking free, each claiming to be whole. Let me help you understand." He gestured, and the air rippled. I saw visions, images pulled from the warp itself. I saw the Emperor on Terra 30,000 years ago, before he had united the planet. I saw him conquering nation after nation, not through love or wisdom, but through calculated force and manipulation. I saw him creating the Primarchs, his sons, not as children, but as tools to be used in his great work. I saw him during the Great Crusade, making alliances he planned to break, making promises he never intended to keep. Everything was strategy. Everything was steps on a path to absolute power. "I am ambition," the figure said. "I am the core truth of what he was. Not the kindly father, not the wise teacher. I am the drive for control, the hunger to reshape reality itself. I am what made him emperor, and I am what will make him god." Valoris raised his guardian spear. "You are an abomination, a cancer cut from his greater self." Ambition laughed. "I am the self he always was. The others are the cancer, the weaknesses that held him back. Wrath without direction is waste. Science without purpose is meaningless. Protection without conquest is stagnation. Compassion without strength is death. But ambition, that is what moves the universe forward. That is what builds empires." "Why reveal yourself now?" I asked, trying to keep him talking while I calculated our chances. We were 2 custodes against a fragment of the Emperor's power. The math was not good. "Because the time has come to reunify," Ambition said. "The other fragments are weakening themselves through conflict. Each day they exist separately. They grow more unstable, more focused on their narrow purpose. Soon they will be vulnerable, and then I will absorb them. I will take their power and add it to my own. I will become what he should have been from the beginning, a god unconstrained by mercy or doubt, driven only by the will to dominate." He turned back to the throne. The Emperor's body still sat there, withered and gray. But I could see now that it was dimmer than before, like a candle burning low. Each fragment that broke away took a piece of the whole. If this continued, there would be nothing left. "You cannot," I said. "If you absorb the others by force, you will not be whole. You will just be the strongest fragment pretending to be complete." Ambition smiled. "That is all any ruler is, Tribune. A fragment that dominates the others. The Emperor was never complete. No being that powerful could be. He was always at war with himself, always struggling between different desires and goals. I simply made that war explicit." "You caused this," Valoris said. "You deliberately split him apart." "I simply gave each aspect what it wanted most," Ambition said. "Freedom from the others. Wrath wanted to punish without mercy holding it back. Science wanted to experiment without ethics constraining it. Guardian wanted to protect without wisdom guiding its actions. Compassion wanted to forgive without judgment. I gave them all their wish. And now I will take the power they wasted." He raised his hand, and I felt a pulling sensation as if hooks had lodged in my soul. Around the palace I could feel the other fragments being drawn toward the throne room. This was his trap. He had revealed himself to bring them all together. He would absorb them here in front of the throne, and there was nothing we could do to stop it. The Wrath fragment appeared first, materializing in flames. "Brother," he said, his voice dripping contempt. "You hide while I do the hard work of cleansing. You are weak." "I am patient," Ambition replied. "Patience is not weakness, it is power delayed for maximum effect." The science fragment shimmered into existence, his eyes wild with discovery. "Fascinating. The ambition aspect has learned to manipulate the psychic resonance between fragments. The application of force over distance through shared consciousness is theoretically impossible, yet here we are. Your theories bore me, Wrath said. Action is all that matters. The Guardian fragment appeared, his form flickering with protective energy. This is a trap. We should not be here together. Together we are vulnerable. Together we are strong, said the compassion fragment, manifesting last. His eyes were still wet with tears. Brothers, can you not see? We are destroying everything he built. We must stop fighting. We must remember why he sacrificed himself in the first place. He sacrificed himself because he was weak, Ambition said. Because he allowed sentiment to stay his hand against Horus. Because he loved his son more than his mission. That weakness will not plague me. The fragments began to argue among themselves, their voices rising. The air crackled with psychic energy. The walls of the throne room began to crack. I saw the obsidian floor splitting, ancient stone unable to withstand the pressure of 5 godlike beings in conflict. And then I saw it, a flicker of movement from the throne. The Emperor's withered hand had moved just slightly. His fingers curled as if trying to grasp something. Beneath his closed eyelids, his eyes were moving faster now, desperately. He was still in there somewhere, the original consciousness trapped in a failing body while his mind fought itself across 5 separate incarnations. I made a decision that would doom me or save everything. I stepped between the fragments. Enough, I said. My voice was nothing compared to theirs, a whisper against thunder. But I was a custodian. I was created to stand in the presence of God and remain sane. I was built to speak truth to absolute power. You are all wrong. The fragments turned to look at me, 5 pairs of golden eyes, each containing enough power to unmake worlds. I felt my armor heating, my skin began to blister. Blood ran from my nose, but I stood firm. You are not the Emperor, I said. None of you. You are pieces of him, aspects that should exist in balance. Wrath without mercy is cruelty. Science without ethics is madness. Protection without freedom is prison. Compassion without strength is suicide. And ambition without purpose is tyranny. He was great because he contained all of you, because he balanced you against each other. Lies, Ambition said. Balance is myth. Power is what matters. And I will have all the power. He struck, not at me but at the other fragments. Golden energy erupted from his hands, chains of pure will that wrapped around his brothers. I watched in horror as he began to draw them toward himself, absorbing their essence. The compassion fragment cried out in pain. The guardian fragment tried to shield the others but failed. Even the wrath fragment could not break free. The throne room shook. Reality itself groaned under the weight of what was happening. I saw the walls beginning to fade, the barrier between real space and the warp growing thin. In the distance I heard laughter, dark laughter. The Chaos Gods were watching. They were waiting for the moment when the fragments destroyed each other, when the Emperor's power would be scattered and vulnerable. I did the only thing I could think of. I ran to the throne. I placed my hands on the Emperor's withered body, and I opened my mind. The pain was beyond description. It was like diving into a star. My consciousness was burned away in an instant. Every memory, every thought, everything I had ever been was incinerated by the sheer power flowing through the throne. But something remained, some core of self that refused to die. And in that moment of contact, I felt them all. I felt the Emperor's true mind, trapped and scattered, but still aware. I felt his desperation, his anger, his sorrow at what he had become. I felt the 10,000 years of agony, the slow dissolution of his sanity under the weight of endless pain. I felt the moment when his psyche had finally cracked, unable to contain the contradictions of his nature any longer. God and man, tyrant and father, destroyer and creator. He had tried to be all things and had been broken by the attempt. But I also felt something else, the reason he had held on for so long. The reason he had endured when any other being would have died or gone mad. Love. Not the soft compassion of the fragment that wore that name, but a deeper love, the love of a creator for his creation. The love of a father who sees his children suffering and cannot bear to abandon them. He had held on because humanity needed him. Because without his light in the warp, without his will holding back the demons, everything would fall. And in that moment I understood. The fragments could not be forced back together. They had to choose to reunify. They had to remember what they had lost by separating. They had to feel again the love that had sustained the whole for 10 millennia. I became the bridge. I felt the fragments flowing through me, their essences using my body as a meeting ground. The compassion fragment came first, drawn by the love I had touched, then guardian, protective instinct recognizing something worth defending. Science followed, curious about what was happening. Even wrath hesitated, feeling something it had not felt since separation, a sense of rightness, of completion. But ambition fought. He had come too far. He had planned too long. He would not give up his dream of becoming God perfected. He pulled harder, trying to absorb the others before they could escape into me. And for a moment I thought he would succeed. Then the Emperor moved. His eyes opened. Not the glowing golden eyes of his fragments, but the eyes of a man who had suffered beyond endurance and yet endured. His hand, withered and weak, reached out and touched my shoulder. And through that touch I felt his will. Not as command, but as request. Help me, my son. Help me remember how to be whole. The Emperor's touch changed everything. His will flowed through me like lightning through copper wire, not destroying but conducting. I became the anchor he needed, the bridge between his scattered fragments and his dying body. The pain was beyond anything I had experienced in 3 centuries of service. My armor began to crack, the ancient auramite splitting under pressures it was never designed to withstand. Blood poured from my eyes, my nose, my ears. My twin hearts hammered so fast they felt like a single continuous beat. But I held on. I had to hold on. Because in that moment of contact I saw the plan forming in the Emperor's mind. Not my plan, his. He was showing me what needed to happen. The fragments could not be forced. They had to choose. And I would be the one to convince them. I pulled away from the throne, my body moving through sheer will. The fragments were still fighting, ambition's chains wrapped around the others, pulling them inexorably toward absorption. The throne room was coming apart. Great cracks ran up the walls. Chunks of stone fell from the ceiling high above, smashing into the floor. The boundary between reality and the warp was paper thin now. I could see shapes moving beyond it, demons pressing against the barrier, waiting for it to fail. Compassion, I called out, my voice raw and broken. You weep for what humanity has become. But look at what you are doing now. You released murderers in the name of love. Billions suffer because you cannot see that mercy without judgment is cruelty in disguise. The compassion fragment turned its tear-streaked face toward me. I only wanted to save them, to give them what he never gave, unconditional acceptance, freedom from fear. He did give them that, I said, but he balanced it with truth. He loved humanity enough to demand they be better than they were. You love them so much you accept them staying broken. That is not compassion. That is abandonment wearing compassion's mask. I felt the fragment waver. Doubt crept into those golden eyes. But the pain I have caused, the deaths, how can I return to being part of something that might cause more pain? Because pain is part of growth, I said. He understood that. The whole understood that. You are not meant to exist alone. You are meant to be the heart that keeps the mind human. Come back. Remember what it felt like to be balanced. The compassion fragment looked at me for a long moment. Then it looked at the throne, at the withered body still sitting there, hand outstretched. Something flickered across its face. Recognition, memory, love not as sentiment but as sacrifice. It began to move toward me, fighting against ambition's chains. The links of golden energy stretched, strained. Ambition roared in fury, pulling harder. But compassion kept coming, step by step, fighting through pain that would have destroyed a lesser being. When it reached me, it placed its hand on my chest. The world exploded into sensation. I felt every suffering human in the Imperium, every slave in the manufactorums, every soldier dying on distant battlefields, every child crying in the dark hive levels, every mother mourning her lost sons. The weight of it crushed me. I fell to my knees, gasping. How had the Emperor endured this? How had he felt all this pain and not gone mad? Then I understood. He had not endured it alone. It had been balanced by the other aspects of his nature: wrath to fight against injustice, science to solve problems, guardian to protect, ambition to drive forward, all working together, all keeping each other from going too far. The compassion fragment flowed into me, becoming part of my consciousness. I felt it settling into place, not destroying who I was, but expanding it. Now I carried a piece of the Emperor within me. The weight was unbearable, the responsibility was crushing. But I stood up, because he had stood up for 10,000 years, because humanity needed someone to bear this weight. "Guardian," I said, turning to the protective fragment, "you have locked down thousands of worlds. You have turned sanctuary into prison. You have kept them so safe they cannot live. Is that what he wanted? Is that what you want?" The Guardian fragment's face was anguished. "They are in danger. The galaxy is full of threats. I cannot protect them if they are scattered. I cannot keep them safe if they are free. You cannot keep them alive if they are trapped," I said. He knew this. Protection must be balanced with freedom. A bird in a cage is safe, but it is not living. You have built thousands of cages and called it love. "But the risks," Guardian said. "The chaos, the xenos, the betrayals. I have seen what happens when humans are left unguarded. They die, they suffer, they fall." "Yes," I said, "they do. And that is their right, to risk, to fail, to learn from their failures." He protected humanity so they could grow, not so they could hide. Come back. Remember what true protection means: not control, not imprisonment, but the strength to let those you love face danger and trust. They will survive. The Guardian fragment's eyes widened. I saw tears forming, real tears, not the constant weeping of compassion, but the single tear of someone recognizing a painful truth. The fragment looked at its hands, at the chains of pure protective energy it had wrapped around entire worlds, and I saw the moment it understood what it had become. "I only wanted them safe," it whispered. "I know," I said, "but he wanted them strong. Safety and strength must exist together. Come back." The Guardian fragment moved toward me, and this time ambition's chains broke. They shattered like glass, unable to hold a being that had truly chosen to leave. Guardian placed its hand on my other shoulder, and I felt power surge through me. Not just the power to protect, but the wisdom to know when protection became cage. The fragment merged with me, joining compassion inside my consciousness. The weight doubled. My legs shook. My spine felt like it was being compressed. My armor was useless now, more burden than protection. I tore it off piece by piece, the ancient auramite clattering to the floor. I stood in my simple underarmor, a custodian stripped of his golden shell, bearing the weight of gods. "Science," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. "You have performed experiments on billions. You have treated human beings as resources to be used. You have learned much but understood nothing. Is knowledge worth the cost of your humanity?" The science fragment tilted its head, studying me like I was a fascinating puzzle. "Humanity is a limitation to be overcome. Sentiment clouds judgment. Ethics restrict discovery. He always knew this. He created the Primarchs through methods that would be called monstrous by lesser minds. He waged war across the galaxy in the name of truth. Science requires sacrifice." "Science requires purpose," I said. "Knowledge for its own sake is empty." He studied. He learned. He experimented, yes, but he did it to improve the human condition, not to satisfy curiosity. Every discovery was meant to lift humanity up, not tear it apart to see how it worked. You have forgotten why knowledge matters. Knowledge matters because it is truth, science said, and truth is the only thing that matters. No, I said. Truth is a tool, like a knife. It can cut away disease or it can kill. The purpose behind the truth is what matters. Come back. Remember why he sought knowledge in the first place, not to dominate, not to control, but to free humanity from the darkness of ignorance. The science fragment paused. Its eyes, which had been burning with the fire of discovery, dimmed slightly. But I have learned so much. I have seen possibilities. I have glimpsed what humanity could become if only we were willing to pay the price. And that is exactly why you must return, I said. Because without the other aspects to guide you, you will pay prices that should never be paid. You will sacrifice what makes humanity worth saving in order to save it. That is not science. That is madness wearing science's face. The fragment looked at its hands. They were covered in equations, in formulae that described the fundamental forces of the universe. But I saw something else now. I saw the blood on those hands, the lives spent in pursuit of knowledge, the children altered beyond recognition, the screaming test subjects. The fragment saw it too. "What have I done?" it whispered. "What you thought was necessary," I said. "But you thought wrong, because you were incomplete. Come back, be whole. Let wisdom guide discovery again." The science fragment came to me, slowly, reluctantly. It was the hardest for it to accept. Science hates admitting error. But it came. It placed its hand on my head and knowledge flooded into me. Not just facts, but understanding. The structure of atoms, the flow of the warp, the mathematics of reality itself. And with it came the terrible recognition of how much damage could be done by those who knew much, but understood little. 3 fragments now dwelt within me. My body was failing. I could feel my organs shutting down one by one. My enhanced physiology was buying me time, but not much. Blood ran from every pore. My skin was pale as death, but I could not stop, not yet. "Wrath," I said, turning to the rage-filled fragment. "You have killed billions. You have judged and found wanting. You have purged and burned and destroyed. And what have you accomplished? You have made them fear you. But fear is not respect. Terror is not justice." He knew this. Even in his rage, even when he destroyed Horus, he wept for what he had lost. "You have forgotten how to weep." Wrath's face twisted. "They deserved death, all of them. 10,000 years of corruption, 10,000 years of betraying everything he built. They made him a god. They worshipped him as they burned books. They prayed to him as they murdered scientists. They deserved everything I gave them." "Some did," I said, "but not all. You killed entire hive districts without checking who lived there. You erased billions without learning their names. You became exactly what you claimed to fight against. A tyrant who decides life and death based on no evidence but your own rage." "They were guilty," Wrath said, but its voice wavered. "Some were," I said. "But you killed the innocent along with the guilty. You killed children who had not yet chosen what they would become. You killed those who were trying to make things better. You killed those who questioned the system. You became the very thing he fought against during the unification of Terra, a ruler who saw only in black and white, who allowed no room for growth or change or redemption." Wrath stepped back. For the first time since manifesting, the fire in its eyes dimmed. "But the rage, it is all I am, it is all I have. Without rage, what am I?" "You are justice," I said. "Rage balanced by mercy, judgment tempered by wisdom. You are the sword that protects, not the axe that simply destroys." He was angry. Yes. He burned with fury at what humanity had become, yes. But he never let that fury consume him entirely until now. Until he broke. "Come back." Let the other aspects remind you that justice requires more than wrath. The fragment looked at me and I saw something I had not expected. Fear. Not fear of me, but fear of losing itself. Fear of being subsumed back into the whole. Fear of becoming weak again. If I return, Wrath said slowly, if I allow compassion and guardian and science to temper me, will I still be able to do what must be done? Will I still be able to strike down evil when I see it? Yes, I said, but you will strike down only evil, not everything that displeases you, not everyone who fails to meet impossible standards. You will be justice instead of rage. And justice is stronger than rage because it knows when to stop. Wrath stood silent for a long moment. Then it looked at the throne, at the Emperor's body growing dimmer by the second. He is dying, it said. Yes, I said. Because you are all here instead of there, because his mind is scattered and his body is failing. If you do not return, there will be nothing to return to. And then all your rage, all your judgment, all your purging will have accomplished nothing. You will have destroyed the Imperium you claim to save. That was the argument that won. Not appeals to mercy, not reminders of humanity, but simple logic. If the Emperor died, wrath would have no purpose. It would fade away. Another fragment lost to the warp. Better to be part of something greater than to die alone in pointless fury. Wrath came to me, and when it touched my chest, I screamed. The rage was beyond anything I had imagined. I felt every betrayal humanity had committed, every moment of willful ignorance, every choice to worship instead of learn, every book burned, every scientist killed, every truth denied. The fury of it burned through me like acid. I wanted to kill. I wanted to destroy. I wanted to purge the galaxy clean and start over with nothing. But the other fragments held me steady. Compassion whispered that humans were fallible and deserved patience. Guardian reminded me that destruction left nothing to protect. Science argued that burning evidence eliminated the chance to learn from mistakes. Together they contained wrath, not eliminating it but channeling it, giving it purpose and direction. 4 fragments now lived inside me. My body was barely holding together. I could see through my own skin to the bones beneath. My blood had turned to golden light, leaking from my wounds like liquid sun. I was dying. But I had one more fragment to convince, the hardest one. Ambition stood across from me, its chains now worthless, its trap sprung but empty. It had not captured the fragments. I had, and it knew what that meant. Clever, Ambition said, its voice cold. You have stolen my victory. You have taken what should have been mine. But you cannot hold them. You are mortal. Enhanced, yes, but still mortal. Already you are dying. When you die, they will scatter again, and I will be waiting. You could join us, I said, each word costing me strength I did not have. You could return to the whole. You are not evil, Ambition. You are necessary. He needs his drive. He needs his will to push forward. Without you, he is passive. Without you, he accepts defeat. You are the part that never gives up, that always seeks the next goal, the next achievement. Come back. Be part of something greater than yourself. Ambition laughed. Something greater than myself? I am the Emperor's core. I am what made him great. The others are weaknesses he should have shed long ago. Why would I dilute my strength by rejoining them? Because alone you are not strength, I said. You are obsession. You seek power for power's sake. You conquer for the sake of conquest. You build empires that crush those they claim to serve. He was great not because of his ambition, but because his ambition served a purpose larger than itself. He wanted to rule, yes, but he wanted to rule in order to protect, to guide, to elevate. Your ambition without his compassion is tyranny. Your drive without his wisdom is madness. Better a mad god than no god at all, Ambition said. Is it? I asked. Look at what you have done in 3 days. You have torn the Imperium apart. You have set Space Marine against Space Marine. You have weakened humanity at the exact moment when the chaos gods are strongest. You claim to be what he needs. But he needs balance. He needs all his aspects working together, even you, especially you, but not you alone. Ambition's face twisted with conflict. I could see it calculating, weighing options, considering outcomes. That was its nature, always planning, always scheming, always looking for advantage. If I return, it said slowly, I will be outvoted, 4 against 1. They will suppress me, they will limit me, they will turn me into something weak and compromising. No, I said. They will focus you. They will give you purpose. And you will give them drive. Together you will be what he was meant to be. Apart you are all monsters wearing pieces of his face. I felt my body beginning to fail completely. My legs collapsed. I fell to my knees on the cracked obsidian floor. The 4 fragments inside me were keeping me alive through sheer force of will, but even that had limits. I had minutes left, maybe seconds. Decide now, I said. Because when I die, they scatter, and you will be alone. The strongest fragment, yes, but alone. Is that what you want? To be the last broken piece of a god who could have been whole? Ambition stared at me. Then it looked at the throne. The Emperor's body was barely glowing now, just the faintest shimmer of golden light. He was fading. They were all fading, and Ambition knew it. Damn you, Ambition said. Damn you for being right. It came to me not with rage or tears or reluctance, but with cold calculation. It had weighed the options and chosen the path most likely to succeed. That was Ambition's nature. It would join not because it wanted to, but because it was the smart play. When it touched me, I felt purpose flood my being. Not just the drive to do things, but the vision to see what needed doing. The ability to plan across centuries. The will to make hard choices, the strength to sacrifice today for a better tomorrow. And underlying it all, the terrible recognition that sometimes the end did justify the means. That sometimes cruelty was necessary. That sometimes people had to die for the greater good. But now that recognition was balanced by compassion weeping for each death, by Guardian questioning if the sacrifice was truly necessary, by science demanding evidence that the ends would actually be achieved, by Wrath ensuring that if blood must be spilled, it was the blood of the guilty. Together they created something that was neither tyrant nor weakling, something that could be both hard and kind, both ambitious and merciful. I held all 5 fragments inside me. I was the vessel for a god's scattered mind, and I was dying. My body could not contain this much power, no mortal body could. I had minutes at most before I simply burned away, taking the fragments with me into death. But that was fine, because I had done what needed doing. I had brought them together, I had reminded them of what they had lost by separating. And now, with my last strength, I would give them back to him. I crawled toward the throne. Each movement was agony, my hands left trails of golden blood on the floor. My vision was fading, the throne room becoming shadows and light. But I could see him there, the Emperor, his hand still outstretched, his eyes open and watching me struggle toward him. I reached the throne. I placed my hand on his withered leg, and I let go. The fragments flowed out of me like water from a broken dam. I felt each one leave, taking with it a piece of the consciousness I had briefly shared. Compassion went first, its gentle presence withdrawing like a warm blanket being pulled away. Then Guardian, taking with it the fierce protectiveness that had filled my chest. Science followed, draining away the understanding of complex truths I had momentarily grasped. Wrath departed like fire being doused, leaving me cold. And finally Ambition, its calculating presence vanishing and leaving behind only exhaustion. They did not return to the throne, not directly. Instead, they flowed into the Emperor's outstretched hand, up his arm, into his chest. I watched as golden light began to fill his withered body, not healing it, but illuminating it from within. His ancient bones glowed. His desiccated flesh became translucent. For a moment he looked like a sketch made of light, the rough outline of a man filled with divine fire. Then the light condensed. It pulled inward, becoming denser, more focused. The Emperor's body began to change, not rejuvenating, not returning to youth, but solidifying into something that was neither living nor dead. His eyes, which had been open but empty, suddenly focused. They looked at me, and in that gaze I saw all 5 aspects working together: compassion and wrath, science and guardian, and underlying it all, ambition tempered by wisdom. "Cassius," he said, and his voice was his own again. Not the divided voices of the fragments, but a single voice containing multitudes. "You have done what I could not. You have reminded me of what I was before I broke." I tried to speak, but no words came. My body was failing completely now. Without the fragments to sustain me, I had perhaps seconds left. My vision narrowed to a tunnel. The edges went dark. I could feel death approaching, not as an enemy, but as a friend offering rest after impossible labor. The Emperor stood. For the first time in 10,000 years, he rose from the golden throne. The ancient mechanisms that had bound him sparked and failed. Cables tore free. Tubes snapped and hissed. The tech priests who had tended these machines for millennia would have wept to see them destroyed so casually. But the Emperor needed them no longer. He knelt beside me. His hand, no longer withered but still ancient beyond measure, touched my forehead. I felt warmth flow into me, not healing exactly. My body was too far gone for that, but strength, enough to breathe, enough to speak, enough to hear what he needed to say. "I cannot stay," he said softly. "Not as I was. The fragmentation was not an accident, Cassius. It was a warning. My mind was never meant to contain so much for so long. 10,000 years of holding back the darkness. 10,000 years of being the beacon that guides humanity through the warp. 10,000 years of existing in constant agony while maintaining perfect focus. No being, no matter how powerful, was designed to endure that." "Then what happens now?" I managed to whisper. "If you cannot return to the throne, if you cannot maintain the Astronomicon, then the Imperium falls. Ships will be lost in the warp. Worlds will be cut off. Everything will collapse." "Not collapse," he said. "Transform. I showed you the truth when you held the fragments. This was not me losing control. This was me choosing to release it. The alternative was continuing until my mind shattered completely, until instead of 5 fragments there were 5,000, each one weaker, each one more unstable, until nothing remained but psychic echoes screaming in the warp." He helped me sit up, supporting my weight against his own body. I could feel the power in him now, reunified but different than before. More focused, more purposeful. Less like a god and more like a man who understood what godhood truly cost. "For 10,000 years I have been one man trying to guide trillions," he continued. "One mind trying to hold back an ocean of darkness. One will trying to illuminate the entire galaxy. It was always unsustainable. I knew this. Even before Horus betrayed me. Even before I was interred on the throne. I knew that eventually I would reach my limit. The fragmentation was that limit reached." "But you reunified," I said. "The fragments came back together. Because of you," he said. "Because you reminded them of what they lost by separating. But the underlying problem remains. I am still one being trying to do the work of millions. The only difference is that now I understand I cannot continue this way. I must change or I must die. And if I die, the Imperium dies with me." He looked toward the massive windows of the throne room. Beyond them, Terra stretched out, still scarred from the fighting of the past 3 days. Entire districts lay in ruins. Billions had died. The Imperium had been shaken to its foundations, but it still stood. Damaged, yes, weakened, certainly, but not destroyed. "There is another way," he said. "A way I should have seen 10,000 years ago but was too proud to accept. I do not need to bear this burden alone. I do not need to be the single point of light in the darkness. Humanity has evolved, Cassius. In the 10 millennia since my interment, the number of psychers being born has increased 1,000-fold. They are not accidents or aberrations. They are the next step in human evolution. They are what I always intended humanity to become. But they are vulnerable, I said. Without training, without control, they become gateways for demons. The warp tears them apart. That is why they are brought to the Astronomican chambers to be sacrificed to sustain you. Yes, he said, and I heard sorrow in his voice. 10,000 psychers every day, their lives burn to ash to keep one man alive. It is monstrous, it is necessary, it is unsustainable, but there is another option. Instead of consuming their power, I can share mine. He stood, pulling me up with him. My legs would not hold my weight, so he supported me, one arm around my shoulders. Together we walked to the windows. Below us, Terra stretched to the horizon, a world-spanning city, broken and burning, but still alive. "Watch," he said. He raised his free hand, and golden light erupted from his palm. Not the destructive light of the Wrath fragment or the curious light of science. This was something new, something that combined all 5 aspects into a single purpose. The light split into thousands of streams, each one shooting out through the windows, through the walls, through the palace itself, spreading across Terra and beyond. I felt rather than saw what was happening. The streams of light were seeking out psychers across the planet. Every untrained child whose powers had just awakened, every rogue psycher hiding in the underhives, every sanctioned psycher serving in the imperial bureaucracy, every astropath, every navigator, every human with even the slightest touch of psychic gift. The light found them all, and it did not destroy them. It touched them gently, carefully, like a teacher's hand guiding a student. I felt the connections forming. The Emperor was creating a network, linking himself to thousands upon thousands of psychers, not consuming them, not possessing them, but sharing his power with them, teaching them, protecting them, using them as anchors to distribute the burden he had carried alone for so long. "I am giving them fragments of my consciousness," he explained. "Small pieces, carefully limited, balanced by all 5 aspects working together. They will become what I am calling the Imperial conduits, humans who carry a shard of divine awareness within them. They will be able to draw on my power to resist the demons of the warp, to guide ships through the Imperium. But they will remain human. They will remain themselves. They will not be consumed as the throne consumed me." "How many?" I asked. "Thousands to start," he said. "Eventually tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands, each one carrying a tiny fragment, too small to be dangerous, too small to split into separate aspects. But together, distributed across the galaxy, they will do what I could never do alone. They will be the light in the darkness. They will be the beacon that guides humanity home." I watched as the light continued to spread. On Terra alone, I could sense hundreds of psychers awakening to their new reality. Some panicked, overwhelmed by the presence suddenly within them. Others embraced it, understanding instinctively what was being offered. A few rejected it outright, and the light withdrew, respecting their choice. This was not possession. This was partnership. "But you," I said, "what happens to you? If you distribute your consciousness across thousands of hosts, will you still exist as a unified being?" He smiled, and it was a sad smile. "I will exist as I should have from the beginning. Not as a god, not as a single all-powerful ruler, but as a guiding force distributed among my people. I will still have awareness. I will still have purpose. But I will no longer be one man trying to be everywhere at once. I will be everywhere at once through them. Some will go mad," I said. "Some will be corrupted. Some will use your power for evil." "Yes," he agreed. "That is the risk. That is the price of freedom. For 10,000 years, the Imperium tried to control everything, to prevent every possible failure through rigid structure and absolute authority. And it created a nightmare. Better to risk occasional corruption than guarantee total stagnation. Better to accept that some will fall than to prevent anyone from rising. The light was spreading beyond Terra now. I could sense it reaching out to other worlds in the Sol system. To Mars, where thousands of tech priests with latent psychic abilities suddenly found themselves connected to something greater than the Omnissiah they had worshipped. To the Forge worlds, to the Hive worlds, to the frontier colonies. Everywhere humans with psychic gifts existed, the Emperor's light was reaching them, offering partnership, offering power, offering purpose. "What about you?" he asked, turning his attention back to me. "You held all 5 fragments within you. You bore the weight of godhood and survived. That changes a person, Cassius. You are no longer simply custodian tribune Cassius Varn." I felt it then, the piece of him that had remained behind when the fragments flowed back to the throne. Not one of the 5 major aspects, but something else. Something smaller but no less important. A shard of his consciousness that had bonded with mine during those moments of union. It was permanent. It was part of me now. I would never be free of it. "What is it?" I asked. "What aspect did you leave in me?" "Memory," he said. "I left you with the memory of what I was before I broke. The memory of my original purpose, my hope for humanity, my love for my flawed, beautiful, maddening species. You are the first of the Imperial conduits, Cassius. You will carry that memory and share it with the others. You will help them understand that the power they carry is not meant for domination, but for service." He released me, and I found that I could stand on my own. My body was still damaged, still marked by the ordeal I had endured, but the shard of his consciousness within me was sustaining me, healing me slowly, giving me strength beyond what my enhanced biology could provide. "I have work for you," he said. "The Imperial conduits will need guidance. They will need someone who understands what it means to carry a fragment of the divine without being consumed by it. Someone who has felt the temptation of godhood and chosen humanity instead. That someone is you." "What about the throne?" I asked, looking back at the ancient golden chair, now dark and silent, its mechanisms destroyed by his departure. "The throne served its purpose," he said. "It kept me alive when I should have died. It gave humanity 10,000 years to grow strong enough to survive without me being physically present. But its time is over. The new Astronomicon will not come from one man on one throne. It will come from thousands of conduits across the galaxy, each one adding their light to the beacon. Distributed, redundant, impossible to destroy through single decapitation." I understood then what he had truly achieved. Not a return to power, but a transformation of power itself. He had taken the model of the Imperium, the single autocrat controlling everything, and shattered it. Now control would be distributed, power would be shared. The Imperium would become not one man's dream imposed on billions, but a collective effort guided by thousands of conduits, each maintaining their humanity while channeling divine power. "There will be war," I said. "The existing power structures will resist. The ecclesiarchy will call this heresy. The High Lords will see it as a threat to their authority. The Space Marine chapters will divide over whether to accept the new order." "Yes," he said calmly. "There will be war. There will be resistance. There will be those who prefer the comfortable corruption of the old system to the uncertain promise of the new. But that war is necessary. Stagnation must be burned away before growth can occur. The Imperium as it existed for 10,000 years is dead. What comes next will be born in blood and fire, but it will be born free." He walked to the throne one last time. He placed his hand on the ancient golden metal, and I saw sadness cross his face. "I sat here for so long," he said quietly. "So long that I forgot what it felt like to move, to act. To be more than a dying battery powering a failing machine. No more. I will not be imprisoned again. Not by enemies, not by duty, not by my own people's need for a god to worship." He turned back to me. "Go now, Cassius. Find the other conduits. help them understand what is happening, teach them to use the power I have given them, build the network that will replace the throne, and know that I will be with you, not as a god watching from above, but as a partner, working beside you, sharing the burden as it should have been shared from the beginning. Where will you go? I asked. Everywhere, he said. Nowhere. I will exist in the connections between the conduits. I will speak through them when needed. I will fight through them when the galaxy requires it. But I will not be one man standing alone. That age is over. The light around him intensified. His body began to fade, becoming translucent again, not dying, transforming, distributing himself across the thousands of connections he had made. I felt the moment when his physical form ceased to exist, when he became pure consciousness spread across the network of conduits like stars spread across the night sky. But I also felt him speak one last time, not in words, but in pure meaning transmitted directly to my mind and to every other conduit across the galaxy simultaneously. This is what happens when the Emperor loses control. He learns that control was the cage and freedom is far more dangerous, but it is also far more alive. I stood alone in the throne room. The golden throne sat empty behind me, just an ancient chair now, stripped of its divinity. Around me, the bodies of tech priests and high lords lay where they had fallen. Outside, Terra burned. Across the galaxy, the Imperium convulsed as it felt the change rippling through it. Some worlds rejoiced, some rebelled, some simply waited to see what would come next. I felt the shard of the Emperor within me, not commanding but guiding. I felt the presence of thousands of other conduits, some strong, some weak, all confused, all frightened, all looking for direction. And I understood my purpose. I would be the first teacher, the first guide, the one who showed the others that divinity did not require losing your humanity, that power could be wielded with wisdom, that fragments could work together to create something greater than any whole. I walked out of the throne room, leaving the empty chair behind. My armor was gone, destroyed by the forces that had flowed through me. I wore only simple robes, more pilgrim than warrior, but I carried within me something more valuable than any weapon. I carried the memory of what the Emperor had been before he became a god. And I would share that memory with anyone who would listen. What happens when the Emperor loses control? The universe trembles, the gods quail in fear, and mankind faces not the end but a new beginning. Not salvation through a single savior, but transformation through collective effort. Not one god ruling all, but thousands of conduits sharing divine purpose while maintaining mortal wisdom. The work ahead would be hard. Many would die. Many would fall to corruption. Many would reject the new way and cling to the old certainties. But some would rise. Some would learn. Some would become bridges between humanity and divinity, carrying fragments of power without being consumed by it. And I, Tribune Cassius Varn, no longer simply a custodian but the first imperial conduit, would be there to guide them. Not as a ruler, not as a master, but as a fellow traveler on a path none of us had walked before. The Emperor had shown us the way by releasing control. Now we would follow that path wherever it led, into darkness, into light, into a future unwritten and uncertain, but for the first time in 10,000 years genuinely full of hope.